The audition room smelled like sweat and broken dreams. Chen Wei stood in line behind 40 other dancers, each one stretching, practicing, whispering nervous prayers under their breath. She was number 41, the last one to register before they closed the doors. She had almost not come today. That morning, she woke up in her tiny rented room, stared at the cracked ceiling, and thought about staying in bed. What was the point? She had been to dozens of auditions over the past 2 years. The result was always the same: a polite smile, a thank you for coming. And then nothing. No callback, no second chance. Just silence. But something pushed her out of bed. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the fact that her rent was due in 2 weeks and she had exactly enough money to cover it, but nothing more. Or maybe it was the voice of her grandmother, who passed away 3 years ago, still echoing in her mind. "Little Chen," her grandmother used to say, "the river does not stop flowing just because there are rocks in its path. It finds a way around them." So Chen found her way to this audition hall in downtown Shanghai. She took 2 buses and walked 15 minutes in shoes that had holes in the soles. By the time she arrived, her feet were sore and her confidence was barely hanging on. The Shanghai Contemporary Dance Academy was the most prestigious institution of its kind in the country. Getting accepted here meant everything. It meant training with the best instructors. It meant performing on real stages in front of real audiences. It meant finally being seen. Chen looked around at the other dancers. They were beautiful. Tall, graceful, with expensive practice clothes and hair pulled back in perfect buns. Some of them had clearly been training since childhood. You could see it in the way they held themselves, the casual confidence in their posture. They belonged here. They knew it, and everyone else knew it too. Then there was Chen, 5'3", plain face, hair that never quite cooperated no matter how many pins she used. She was wearing black leggings she bought from a street vendor 3 years ago and a faded gray t-shirt that used to belong to her older brother. Next to these polished dancers, she looked like someone who had wandered in by accident. A girl standing in front of her turned around and looked Chen up and down. The girl had long legs and the kind of effortless beauty that made people stop and stare. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Her eyes said everything. They dismissed Chen completely in less than 2 seconds, then turned back around. Chen felt her face grow hot. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to walk out of this room and never come back. But she stayed. She stayed because walking out would mean admitting that everyone was right about her, that she was ordinary, that she was not meant for this. The line moved slowly. One by one, dancers disappeared through the double doors at the front of the room. Some came out smiling, practically glowing with hope. Others came out with red eyes and trembling lips. The judges inside were known for being harsh. They had to be. Over 500 people auditioned each year. They only accepted 12. Chen tried not to think about those numbers. Instead, she closed her eyes and ran through her routine in her mind. She had choreographed it herself, spending countless nights in the small park near her apartment, practicing under the streetlights because she could not afford studio time. The security guard who patrolled that area had gotten used to seeing her. At first, he told her to leave. Then, after watching her dance night after night, he started bringing her tea from the convenience store across the street. "You have something," he told her once. "I don't know anything about dance, but I know when something makes me feel. And when you dance, I feel something." Chen held on to those words now. She needed them. The hours passed. The room grew quieter as more dancers went in and fewer remained. Chen's stomach growled. She had skipped breakfast to save money. She told herself she would eat after the audition no matter what happened. There was a small noodle shop near the bus station that sold bowls for 15 yuan. She had been dreaming about those noodles all morning. Finally, her number was called. Number 41. She walked toward the double doors on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The audition room was bigger than she expected. High ceilings, mirrors covering every wall, a wooden floor that gleamed under the bright lights. At the far end, 3 judges sat behind a long table, 2 women and 1 man. They looked tired. They had been watching dancers all day, and it showed on their faces. Chen walked to the center of the room and stood on the mark taped to the floor. She bowed like she had been taught. "Name?" one of the women asked without looking up from her clipboard. "Chen Wei." "Age?" 23. The woman finally looked up, her eyebrows raised slightly. 23 was old for this kind of audition. Most of the dancers who came through here were 18, 19 at the most. By 23, you were supposed to already be somewhere. You were supposed to have made it or at least be on your way. "Where did you train?" the other woman asked. Chen hesitated. This was the question she dreaded most. "I trained at the community center in my hometown until I was 17. Then I moved here and trained on my own." "On your own?" The male judge leaned forward. He had gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through her. "No formal instruction? No academy?" "No, sir. I could not afford it." The 3 judges exchanged glances. Chen knew what those glances meant. They were already writing her off. A 23-year-old with no formal training, no connections, no prestigious background. Why was she even here? Why was she wasting their time? The gray-haired judge sighed. "All right, you have 3 minutes. Show us what you can do." Chen nodded and walked to the corner of the room where a small speaker system was set up. She handed her phone to the assistant and waited for her music to start. In those few seconds of silence, a strange calm settled over her. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about the security guard and his cups of tea. She thought about all the nights she spent dancing alone under the stars with no audience except the moon. She thought about the girl who looked at her with those dismissive eyes. She thought about every teacher who told her she did not have what it takes, every rejection letter, every closed door. And then the music started, and Chen stopped thinking altogether. She let her body take over. She had practiced this routine so many times that it lived inside her bones. Every movement flowed into the next, like water finding its natural path. She was not performing for the judges anymore. She was not trying to prove anything to anyone. She was simply dancing because dancing was the only thing that ever made her feel truly alive. When the music ended, Chen stood frozen in her final position, breathing hard. Sweat dripped down her forehead. Her legs were shaking. The room was completely silent. She looked at the judges. The 2 women were staring at her with expressions she could not read. The gray-haired man had put down his pen. "Thank you," he said finally. His voice was different now, softer. "We will be in touch." Chen bowed and walked out of the room. As soon as the doors closed behind her, she let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Her hands were trembling. She had no idea if she had done well or terribly. She could not tell from their faces. All she knew was that she had given everything she had. For 3 minutes, she had poured her entire soul onto that wooden floor. Now all she could do was wait and hope and try to remember how to breathe. The call never came. Chen waited 3 days, then 5, then 10. She checked her phone constantly, making sure the volume was turned up, making sure she had not missed anything. But there was nothing. No call, no email, just silence, like all the times before. On the 11th day, she finally accepted it. She had failed again. Whatever the judges saw in those 3 minutes, it was not enough. She was not enough. That night, Chen sat on the floor of her tiny room and cried. She cried until her chest hurt and her eyes were swollen and she had no tears left. Then she wiped her face, splashed cold water on her skin, and went to work the next morning like nothing had happened. This was her life now. This was what she had chosen. Chen worked 3 jobs to survive in Shanghai. In the mornings, she cleaned offices in a tall building near the financial district. She arrived at 5 in the morning, before the business people showed up, and spent 4 hours mopping floors, emptying trash cans, and wiping down desks. The other cleaners were mostly older women who had been doing this work for decades. They were kind to Chen. They shared their breakfast with her and told her stories about their grandchildren. In the afternoons, she taught dance classes at a community center in a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. The children there could not afford real dance lessons. Their parents worked in factories or construction sites, and there was no money for extras. But the community center offered free classes, and Chen volunteered to teach them. She was not paid much, barely enough to cover her bus fare, but she loved those kids. They reminded her of herself at that age, full of dreams that seemed impossible. In the evenings, she waited tables at a small restaurant near her apartment. The owner was a stern woman in her 60s who rarely smiled, but she let Chen eat the leftover food at the end of each shift. That meal was often the only real food Chen had all day. Between these 3 jobs, Chen practiced. She practiced in the early morning darkness before the office building opened. She practiced in the community center after the children went home. She practiced in the park at midnight, when the city was finally quiet and she could hear her own thoughts. Her body was always tired. Her feet ached constantly. Some nights, she was so exhausted that she fell asleep still wearing her work clothes, too drained to even change. But she kept going. She did not know how to stop. Her roommates thought she was crazy. There were 3 of them sharing a 2-bedroom apartment, sleeping on mattresses on the floor to save money. 2 of them worked at a factory that made electronics. The 3rd sold clothes at a market stall. They were practical people with practical dreams. Save enough money, send some home to their families, maybe one day open a small business. They did not understand Chen. Why was she killing herself for something that would never happen? Why did she keep chasing a dream that had rejected her over and over again? "You are 23 years old," one of them said to her one night. "Soon you will be 24, then 25, and then what? You will be too old to dance and too tired to do anything else. You need to think about your future." Chen did not argue. She knew her roommate meant well. But she also knew that if she gave up now, something inside her would die. Maybe her roommates were right. Maybe she was being foolish. But this foolishness was the only thing keeping her alive. Months passed. Chen entered more competitions, more auditions. The results were always the same. She made it past the first round sometimes, even the second round once or twice. But she never won. She never got the call back that mattered. The judges always said the same things. Her technique was good. Her movements were clean. But she lacked something. Star quality, they called it. That special spark that made audiences fall in love. Chen heard these words so many times that they started to feel like a curse written on her skin. She began to wonder if they were right. Maybe some people were just born to shine, and others were born to watch from the shadows. Maybe all the practice in the world could not change what you were made of. But then she would see one of her students at the community center, a little girl with messy hair and holes in her shoes, spinning in circles with pure joy on her face. And Chen would remember why she started dancing in the first place. Not for fame, not for money, but for that feeling. That moment when the music takes over and nothing else exists. That was worth everything. One winter night, Chen was practicing in the park as usual. It had been snowing earlier, and the ground was covered in a thin layer of white. Her breath came out in clouds. Her fingers were numb. But she kept moving, kept dancing, because stopping meant going back to her cold room and lying awake thinking about all the ways she had failed. An old man was sitting on a bench nearby. Chen had seen him before. He came to the park most nights to feed the stray cats that lived under the bushes. He had never spoken to her, and she had never spoken to him. They existed in the same space without touching. But tonight, when Chen finished her routine and stood catching her breath, the old man spoke. "You are very good," he said. His voice was rough, like he did not use it often. Chen looked at him, surprised. "Thank you." "I used to be a musician," he said. "A long time ago. I played the erhu in an orchestra. We traveled all over the country." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "Then my wife got sick, and I had to stop. I had to take care of her. By the time she passed, I was too old and too out of practice. Nobody wanted me anymore." Chen did not know what to say. She stood there in the snow, listening. "I used to think that was the worst thing that ever happened to me," the old man continued, "giving up my music. But now I am not so sure. I had 40 years with my wife. I was there when she needed me. That is worth more than any concert hall." He looked at Chen with eyes that had seen a lot of life. "But you are young. You still have time. Do not give up yet. The world is full of people who stopped one step before the door opened. Do not be one of them." Chen walked home that night with the old man's words echoing in her head. She did not know if he was right. She did not know if there was really a door waiting to open for her. But his words gave her something she had been running low on. Hope. Just a small piece of it, but enough to keep going for one more day. And sometimes, one more day is all you need. The next morning, Chen woke up early and went to clean offices like she always did. She taught her afternoon dance class. She served dinner at the restaurant. And then, just as she was finishing her shift, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost did not answer. Unknown numbers usually meant scams or wrong numbers, but something made her pick up. "Hello, is this Chen Wei?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is she. This is the Shanghai Contemporary Dance Academy. We reviewed your audition tape again. One of our accepted students had to withdraw due to personal reasons, and we have a spot available. We would like to offer it to you if you are still interested." Chen's hand started shaking. She gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I am still interested." She hung up the phone and stood completely still for a long moment. Then, very quietly, she started to cry. But this time, the tears were different. This time, they tasted like the beginning of something new. Chen showed up to the Shanghai Contemporary Dance Academy on her first day wearing the best clothes she owned. A clean black top, simple pants, and shoes she had polished the night before until they almost looked new. She arrived 30 minutes early because she was terrified of being late. This was the chance she had been waiting for her entire life. She was not going to mess it up. The academy was even more impressive up close. The building was modern, all glass and steel, with wide hallways and natural light pouring in from every direction. There were photographs on the walls of famous dancers who had trained here. Some of them had gone on to perform in Paris, New York, Tokyo. Chen stared at their faces and wondered if her picture would ever hang on these walls. Probably not, she thought. But she was here. That was enough for now. The other students were already gathering in the main studio when Chen walked in. There were 11 of them. 12, including her. The 12 who had made it through hundreds of applications, countless auditions, and brutal eliminations. The best of the best. Chen recognized some faces from the audition day. The tall girl with the long legs who had looked at her with those dismissive eyes was there. So was a boy with sharp cheekbones who moved like every step was a performance. They all looked confident. They all looked like they belonged. Chen felt like an imposter who had snuck in through the back door, because in a way, she had. She was not supposed to be here. She was only here because someone else dropped out. She was a replacement, a second choice. The head instructor walked in, and the room went silent. Her name was Madame Shu, and she was a legend in the dance world. She had performed on stages across the globe before retiring to teach the next generation. She was in her 60s now, but she still moved with the grace of someone half her age. Her eyes were sharp, and her reputation was sharper. They said she could break a student with a single look. Madame Shu stood at the front of the room and studied each of them one by one. When her eyes landed on Chen, they lingered for a moment longer than the others. Chen felt her stomach tighten. "You are here because you showed potential," Madame Shu said. Her voice was calm but firm. "But potential means nothing. Talent means nothing. The only thing that matters in this room is work, how hard you are willing to push, how much pain you are willing to endure, how many times you are willing to fail and get back up." She paused and looked around the room again. "Half of you will not make it to graduation. Some of you will quit. Some of you will be asked to leave. This is not a place for dreamers. This is a place for fighters. If you are not ready to fight, leave now." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Madame Shu nodded. "Good. Let us begin." The first few weeks were the hardest of Chen's life. She thought she knew what hard work meant. She was wrong. The training at the academy was brutal. They practiced for 8 hours a day, sometimes more. Every muscle in Chen's body screamed for rest, but there was no rest. There was only the next exercise, the next routine, the next correction, and the corrections never stopped. Madame Shu watched everything. She saw every mistake, every hesitation, every moment of weakness, and she called them out without mercy. "Your left arm is lazy," she would say to one student. "Your turns are sloppy," she would tell another. "You dance like you are afraid of your own body," she said to Chen one afternoon in front of everyone. Chen's face burned with shame. She wanted to explain that she had taught herself, that she had never had proper training, that she was doing her best. But excuses meant nothing here. Only results mattered. The other students were struggling too, but they hid it better. They had years of formal training to fall back on. They knew the techniques, the terminology, the unwritten rules of this world. Chen was learning everything from scratch, and she was always one step behind. The tall girl with the long legs, whose name Chen learned was Mei Lin, was the star of the group. She was everything Chen was not: graceful, confident, effortlessly beautiful. The instructors praised her constantly. The other students admired her. She was clearly destined for greatness. Mei Lin was not cruel to Chen. She was something worse. She was indifferent. She looked through Chen like she was not even there, like Chen was so far beneath her that she was not worth noticing. Chen told herself it did not matter. She was not here to make friends. She was here to learn, to improve, to become the dancer she knew she could be. But late at night, alone in her small room at the dormitory, the loneliness crept in. She missed her roommates back at the old apartment. She missed the children at the community center. She even missed the stern restaurant owner and her leftover food. She thought about calling her mother, but she did not know what to say. Her mother had never understood her dream. When Chen left home to come to Shanghai, her mother cried and begged her to stay. "Get a stable job," she said. "Find a husband. Have children. Why do you need to chase something so uncertain?" Chen could not explain it. Dancing was not something she chose. It was something she was. Without it, she would just be going through the motions of living, never really alive. 2 months into the program, there was the evaluation performance. Each student had to perform a solo piece in front of Madame Shu and a panel of guest judges. This would determine their ranking in the class and, more importantly, who would be given opportunities to perform in the Academy's upcoming showcase. Chen prepared for weeks. She stayed late every night, practicing until her legs gave out. She chose a piece that told the story of her journey, all the struggle and rejection and small moments of hope. She poured everything into it. On the night of the evaluation, Chen watched the other students perform one by one. They were all incredible. Mei Lin, of course, was flawless. She received a standing ovation from the guest judges. Chen felt her confidence crumbling with every passing minute. When her turn came, Chen walked to the center of the stage. The lights were blinding. She could not see the judges' faces, only dark shapes in the distance. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The music started, and for a terrible moment Chen froze. Her body would not move. Her mind went blank. All those weeks of practice vanished like smoke. She heard a whisper from somewhere in the darkness. Later, she would never know if it was real or imagined, but the whisper said, "Breathe." So she breathed, and then she danced. It was not perfect. She stumbled once, lost her balance for a split second. But she recovered. She kept going. She let the music carry her. Let her body remember what her mind had forgotten. And somewhere in the middle of the piece, something shifted. She stopped trying to impress the judges. She stopped worrying about mistakes. She just danced. The way she used to dance alone in the park under the streetlights. When the music ended, there was silence. Then polite applause. Nothing like the standing ovation Mei Lin received. Chen bowed and walked off the stage. She did not know if she had done enough. She did not know if she would ever be enough. But she had not given up. She had not run away. And right now, that felt like its own kind of victory. The results would come tomorrow. Whatever they were, Chen decided she would face them standing up. She had come too far to fall apart now. The results were posted on the bulletin board outside the main studio the next morning. Chen stood at the back of the crowd, too afraid to push forward. She watched as other students checked their rankings, some smiling with relief, others walking away with tight expressions. When the crowd finally cleared, Chen stepped forward. Her eyes scanned the list from the top. Mei Lin was first, of course. No surprise there. The boy with the sharp cheekbones was second. Chen kept reading, her heart sinking with every name that was not hers. She found herself near the bottom, 10th out of 12. Just 2 spots above the last place. Chen stared at the number for a long time, 10th. After all those late nights, after all that sacrifice, after everything she had given, she was still near the bottom, still not good enough. She walked away before anyone could see her face. She found an empty bathroom at the end of the hallway, locked herself in a stall, and let the tears come. She cried quietly, pressing her hand against her mouth to muffle the sound. She could not let anyone hear. She could not let them know how much this hurt. When she finally came out, she splashed cold water on her face and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red and puffy. She looked exhausted. She looked defeated. But she was still here. She had not been eliminated. 10th place was not good, but it was not last. It was something to build on. Chen took a deep breath and went to class. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain and progress. Chen worked harder than ever. She arrived at the studio before everyone else and left after everyone had gone. She asked questions constantly, even when the other students rolled their eyes. She recorded herself practicing and watched the videos over and over, picking apart every flaw. Slowly, things began to change. Her technique improved. Her movements became sharper, more controlled. Madame Xu still criticized her, but the criticisms became more specific, more helpful. Instead of saying Chen danced like she was afraid, she started pointing out smaller things. The angle of her wrist, the timing of her breath. These were things that could be fixed. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling practice session, Madame Xu asked Chen to stay behind. Chen's stomach dropped. Being asked to stay usually meant bad news. But Madame Xu did not look angry. She looked thoughtful. "You have improved," she said simply. Chen blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Thank you, Madame Xu." "Do not thank me. Thank yourself. You have worked harder than anyone else in this class." "I have been watching." Madame Xu paused, studying Chen with those sharp eyes. But hard work alone will not make you a great dancer. You have something else. Something raw. You dance like someone who has known real pain. That is rare. Most of these students have had easy lives. They dance beautifully, but there is no depth. You have depth. Chen did not know what to say. No one had ever told her anything like this before. There is a national competition in 3 months, Madame Xu continued. The Rising Star Dance Championship. It is broadcast on television. Millions of people watch. I am allowed to nominate 2 students from this academy. I have already chosen Mei Lin. I am considering you for the 2nd spot. Chen's breath caught in her throat. Me? Do not get too excited. I said I am considering you. There are others who are technically better. But technique can be taught. What you have cannot. Madame Xu turned to leave, then paused at the door. Prove to me that I am not making a mistake. That night, Chen could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The Rising Star Dance Championship. She had watched it on television for years, dreaming of one day being on that stage. And now Madame Xu was actually considering her. It seemed impossible. It seemed like a dream. But dreams had a way of slipping through your fingers if you were not careful. Chen knew she could not take this chance for granted. She threw herself into training with a new intensity. Every morning, she woke up at 4 and stretched for an hour before the studio opened. She studied videos of past championship winners, analyzing their movements, their expressions, the way they commanded the stage. She experimented with her choreography, trying new things, taking risks she would have been too scared to take before. The other students noticed the change in her. Some of them started treating her differently. Not with respect exactly, but with a kind of cautious curiosity. They could see she was improving. They could see she was becoming a threat. Mei Lin noticed too. One day she approached Chen after class. It was the first time she had ever spoken to her directly. I heard Madame Xu is considering you for the championship, Mei Lin said. Her voice was neutral, impossible to read. Yes, Chen replied carefully. Mei Lin nodded slowly. Good luck. You will need it. She walked away before Chen could respond. Chen was not sure if it was a genuine wish or a subtle insult. Maybe it was both. 2 weeks before the nomination deadline, Chen was practicing alone in the studio late at night. She was working on a new move, something she had invented herself. It was risky, a combination of spins and leaps that pushed her body to its absolute limit. If she landed it perfectly, it would be stunning. If she failed, she could seriously hurt herself. She had tried the move dozens of times and failed every single one, but she kept trying. She had to. This move could be the thing that set her apart, the thing that made the judges remember her. On her 43rd attempt, something clicked. Her body moved exactly the way she had imagined. The spins were perfect, the leap was effortless, and the landing was clean, solid, beautiful. Chen stood frozen for a moment, breathing hard, hardly believing what had just happened. Then she tried it again, and again. Each time, she landed it perfectly. She had done it. She had actually done it. The next day, she showed the move to Madame Xu. The old instructor watched in silence, her face revealing nothing. When Chen finished, Madame Xu was quiet for a long moment. "Where did you learn that?" she finally asked. "I made it up," Chen said. "I have been working on it for weeks." Madame Xu's lips twitched. It was the closest thing to a smile Chen had ever seen on her face. "You are full of surprises, Chen Wei." 1 week later, the official nominations were announced. Mei Lin and Chen Wei would represent the Shanghai Contemporary Dance Academy at the Rising Star Dance Championship. When Chen saw her name on the list, she did not cry. She did not celebrate. She simply stood there, letting the moment sink in. She thought about the girl who had shown up to that first audition in worn-out shoes and a faded shirt. The girl everyone had dismissed. The girl who almost did not come at all. That girl was going to dance on national television. Chen pulled out her phone and made a call she had been putting off for months. Her mother answered on the second ring. "Mama," Chen said, her voice steady. "I have something to tell you. I am going to be on television. I am going to show the whole country who I am." There was silence on the other end. Then, very softly, her mother began to cry. "I always knew," her mother whispered. "I was just scared for you. But I always knew you were special." Chen closed her eyes and let those words wash over her. She had waited her whole life to hear them. Now she just had to prove they were true. The Rising Star Dance Championship was held in a massive theater in Beijing. Chen had never seen anything like it. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Red velvet seats stretched back row after row, enough to hold 3,000 people. Television cameras were positioned everywhere, ready to broadcast every moment to millions of viewers across the country. Chen stood backstage, peeking through the curtain at the filling audience. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth was dry. She had performed in front of judges before, but never anything like this. Never with so many eyes watching. Never with so much at stake. 32 dancers from academies all over China had been selected to compete. They would perform over 2 nights, and the judges would choose one winner. One person who would be crowned the rising star, whose life would change forever. Mei Lin was somewhere backstage, too, warming up in her own corner. She looked calm, almost bored, like this was just another day. Chen envied that confidence. She wished she could borrow even a small piece of it. The first night of competition was brutal. Dancer after dancer took the stage, each one more impressive than the last. There were gymnasts who could bend their bodies in impossible ways. There were classically trained ballerinas with perfect technique. There were contemporary dancers who moved like they were made of liquid. Chen watched them all, and with each performance her confidence shrank a little more. These dancers were incredible. They had been training their whole lives at the best schools with the best teachers. What was she doing here? She was the girl who learned to dance in a public park under streetlights. She did not belong on this stage. But then she remembered the old man in the park, the one who fed the stray cats. She remembered what he told her that cold winter night. The world is full of people who stopped one step before the door opened. Do not be one of them. Chen closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She was here now. There was no turning back. All she could do was dance. Mei Lin performed on the first night and received the highest score of the evening. The judges praised her elegance, her precision, her commanding stage presence. She was the favorite to win. Everyone knew it. Chen was scheduled to perform on the second night. She barely slept that night, lying awake in her hotel room, running through her routine in her mind over and over again. By morning, she was exhausted, but strangely calm. The fear had burned itself out. All that was left was determination. The second night arrived faster than Chen expected. Before she knew it, she was backstage again, waiting for her turn. She was the 15th dancer of the evening. Only 5 more performances after hers, and then the competition would be over. She watched the dancer before her finish to thunderous applause. Then her name was called, Chen Wei, representing the Shanghai Contemporary Dance Academy. She walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding, just like at her first audition. But this time she did not freeze. She walked to her mark, stood tall, and looked out at the darkness where thousands of faces waited. She thought about her grandmother, who always believed in her. She thought about the security guard who brought her tea in the park. She thought about the children at the community center who looked at her like she was a superhero. She thought about her mother, watching at home, probably crying already. She thought about every person who had ever told her she was not good enough, every judge who said she lacked star quality, every dismissive look, every closed door, every rejection letter. Then the music started, and Chen stopped thinking. She danced. Her routine told the story of her life. It began slow, heavy, like carrying a weight that never got lighter. It showed the struggle, the exhaustion, the moments when giving up seemed like the only option. The music swelled with sadness, and Chen let herself feel every bit of it. Then the rhythm changed, the melody lifted, and Chen's movements transformed. She was no longer weighed down, she was rising, fighting, refusing to stay broken. The signature move she had invented came near the end. The combination of spins and leaps that had taken her 43 attempts to land. She launched into it without hesitation, trusting her body, trusting all those hours of practice. She landed it perfectly. The audience gasped. Chen heard it even through the music. That sound gave her wings. The final moments of her routine were pure joy. She danced like she was celebrating everything she had survived, every tear, every failure, every night alone in the dark, wondering if any of it was worth it. It was all worth it. It had led her here, to this stage, to this moment. When the music stopped, Chen held her final position, breathing hard. Sweat dripped down her face. Her legs were trembling. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the audience exploded. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, some of them wiping tears from their eyes. The applause was so loud that Chen could feel it vibrating in her chest. She bowed, and the cheering only grew louder. Walking off the stage, Chen felt like she was floating. She did not know if she had won. She did not care. She had done something more important. She had shown them who she was. Not the girl who was too ordinary, not the replacement who got in because someone else dropped out. She had shown them Chen Wei, the dancer who refused to give up. The remaining performances passed in a blur. Then the judges gathered to deliberate, and the 32 dancers lined up on stage to wait for the results. Chen stood near the back, still in a daze. Mei Lin was near the front, standing tall and composed as always. The head judge, an elderly man who had been a famous choreographer in his youth, took the microphone. He spoke about the incredible talent they had witnessed over the 2 nights. He praised the dedication and passion of every dancer. Then he announced the 3rd place winner, then the 2nd. Mei Lin took 2nd place. Her smile faltered for just a moment before she composed herself and accepted the award gracefully. Chen's heart was pounding. If Mei Lin was 2nd, then who was 1st? And the winner of this year's Rising Star Dance Championship, the judge said. The dancer who moved us in ways we did not expect, who reminded us why we fell in love with dance in the first place. He paused, and the whole theater held its breath. Chen Wei. Chen did not move. She could not move. The words did not make sense. They could not be real. Someone pushed her gently from behind. Go, a voice whispered. They called your name. Chen walked forward in a trance. The audience was on their feet again, cheering even louder than before. Cameras flashed from every direction. The judge placed a golden trophy in her hands and shook her hand warmly. You have a gift, he said quietly, so only she could hear. Do not waste it. Chen looked out at the audience, at the sea of faces she could not see clearly through her tears. Somewhere out there, millions more were watching on their televisions, including a mother in a small town in Sichuan province who was probably crying harder than Chen was. She lifted the trophy above her head, and the cheers washed over her like a wave. The girl nobody believed in had become the dancer nobody would ever forget. And this was only the beginning.